Yep, so the next project I want us to do is a counter, a word counter. So like if you are entering a word here, for instance, here, it will be counting it for you. You know, you are filling some form, they will say maximum is 100 words, and as you are typing the words, you'll be seeing the reduction in the words that you are writing. So the moment it hits that word, then you can no longer write. You won't be able to write in the box again. So let's see how that is done. So we're going to create a new folder inside our practice folder and call it counter. So inside the counter, we're going to create, do we need different folders? No. Let's just create new file. Let's call it style.css. Then inside that storage.css, I'm going to paste this document, this code. So like I always said, you can always find this code in my GitHub link, which I'm going to drop, so you see the link to this code. Then we need to create index.html. Then we'll create a folder inside this counter. So we'll create a folder and call it JS folder. So that's JavaScript folder. Inside the JavaScript folder, we'll create two new files. We're going to call one app.js. Then we're going to create another one, new file, counter.js. Alright, so then on our HTML5, let's quickly come up with the title, JavaScript word counter. So body, so it's just h1. Okay, then we're going to put the external style sheet link, CSS. So CSS style.js, we already have it, style.css. all right, so then here what we'll be using is a text box. So we're going to be using a text box. Enter some text here. Okay, so then text area, so we're going to be using text area rather. So text area, we need the ID, the column. The ID, we're going to use text as the ID. So then the column is going to be a bit bigger. So we're going to use rows, 10 is okay, then column of 60, so that it will be larger by the length, by the breadth rather. So then we're going to have a div with an ID of start. So that's div with an ID of start, so where you will see words like you have written 0 words and 0 character. All right, so then just by the bottom here, we're going to have our script, external script with the source. The first one is going to be the counter.js. Then just leave it like that, because we are using an external. Most times I've been writing my script in between, but sometimes you can put your script file outside, your JavaScript files outside your HTML code. All you just need to do is to reference it. I don't know whether we've done that before, but if we've not, then this is just as simple as it is. Just like normal styling too when I was teaching you external, internal, and inline styling. So this is external styling, for instance, and this is external JS file too that we are using, and this is how to include it. So this gives us the what we need outrightly. So let's open practice and open, I think, counter index.js. So just change this to counter. All right. So as you can see now, so this is the word counter application. So this, if you see the other time there was an error, inspect, there's an error in the console that failed to load resources. That's counter.js. So failed to load resources counter.js. So CSS2, don't know where this is coming from, but I know for these two files. So what we'll do now is, here, if you see that our JavaScript codes are inside the folder called JS, so we're supposed to, we didn't put the right directory. So this is supposed to be JS slash, so JS slash. So I think that error should disappear now. Okay, so it's saying you cannot get this. This is from the CSS file here. This is an external URL, like the way we put the CDN for the way we put CDN. Okay, so that's how this is also added. So this is referencing an external font from Google API. So that is that. So it's because I'm not on the internet, that is why it can't resolve it. So that's that. Then we need to move on to the real coding now. So there are so many things you will be seeing in this example that you've not seen before. Of course, I'm going to explain, and like I've told you countless times, you will not learn everything all at once. So you learn things gradually as we progress. All right, so that is it. So this works fine. So first of all, we are going to go to the counter JS file, and we're going to create a class called, so you can create class in JavaScript. I think this will be the first time. So a class is just like a how will I put it? It's just like a block of code that have so many methods inside, and that you can initiate any of the methods of the class from outside the class when you initiate it. So this is what we call object-oriented programming. So as we proceed, we would see more of this. So JavaScript is an object-oriented programming language as well. So where we use class methods. If you are learning Java, for instance, you're going to be using class most times. Class, then you write a method of your class, etc. like that. So those are the possibilities that are there. So we'll write a class, then some class also have constructors. And what constructor means is that constructor is a code that automatically runs when you call a class, when you initiate a class. So I'm going to be explaining more. So constructor, so we're going to input text, then this, I've told you about this word. So this is referring to a particular method within this class. So when you use this, you want to refer to a particular method. So equals to input text. So this input text, this is the input text that anytime you are initiating this class of word counter, you must add an input text. It is by default, because that's what the constructor is requesting for. So we now created a new parameter with this dot input to equate this input text. Then this dot input test. So we'll now add an event listener. Add event listener on it. Listener. So what type of event listener is input? Then what callback function are we going to use? This dot can't. So this can't is a method that we've not created. All right. So it is a method. This dot can't is a method we execute every time the input event occurs. So we'll go back to the logic later. So what I mean is that anytime somebody is typing something inside the input box, this particular test area, anytime anybody is typing anything inside, automatically that investing this count will be triggered immediately. So it's going to be like a live kind of action. So then I need to put this test area, I need to give it an ID of test. Okay, I think the ID is already there. All right, so that's that. So now so this does count now is another method is a method of this class, inside this class. So because a class can have more than one method, all right? So yes, it can have more than one method. So a class can also have properties. So like this class now can have a property called variable now equals to now. So new, so something like that. So but don't let me bother you. So let's just continue. So we're going to just create the method can't, because we cannot use this just can't without that method being created. So methods are just like normal functions, So a class can have a lot of functions, a lot of methods. So it is called method. So then we're going to have another method called get word start. So this one is going to take a string. So this helps us to do the counting on a particular string. So let matches equals to, that is this string here, this string that we would add, dot match. So we're going to use a regular expression, match, regular expression. What is it? This / backward / look for the key x plus then / g. All right, so this is a regular expression that what this regular expression does is that it returns the number of words of a string. So it will return the number of words of this particular string. So that's what that's what dot match is doing. So we will see it in action shortly. So then this method get word start is returning this is returning some objects. Yep. So character. So one, we are going to be getting the string dot length, the length of the string. I think we've used this before. String dot length. Then we're going to also get the words. That's the word that does the counting. So that is matches. If there is matches, then return matches dot length. All right, so this for the words. So s now return 0. So if no string is written, So the value for words, the character for word becomes 0. But if it is written, then we'll get the length of the word. Then for the character, we'll just get the length of the character, string.length. That's all. So that's what that does for us. So then the count method we now need to call so like I explained the other time, the length property of this particular string, or of the string, get the numbers of character. All right, the numbers of character. So meanwhile, we're going to call the count now to help us get. So this count method, what it is going to do for us is that we're going to say let word start, all right, equals to, so we'll call this get word start. And when we are calling a method inside another method within a class, you use this word, this dot get word start. So rather than calling this function without, ordinarily, if you are writing your JavaScript code, when you want to call a method, you don't need to use this word. But because this method, they are all together in the same class, for us to have access to the method, you must use this word. The same thing is also applicable to this. So then this dot input is also saying that this input text variable is accessible throughout this particular class. So don't struggle trying to understand what I'm saying. Just make sure your code is working. Most of what you are learning now, you would start understanding it the more when you practice. So this dot input text, as you can see, we're already referring to this input text in this from our constructor. This dot input text, okay, dot value, because that input text is what we will pass anytime we are calling the class word class. So we'll pass it. You will see when we get to that point, dot value, then dot trim, the way we've been using trim on our strings, just to trim any word before or after it. So that's what that does. So the get word starts receives a string, and that is why we pass this is the value that it will receive as string here. So because we are initiating get word start here, we must pass a value to it. So because here we stated that anytime you are calling get string, it is get word start, it must come with a value, and this str is just like a parameter or a dummy for it, because this parameter will be used inside this get word start. And here when we are calling it, the value is this dot input dot value dot trim. So, and I've told you how to use how to create functions, so you should understand what this means without necessarily waiting too much on it. So we are going to have a method to the word counter that is going to help us to emit the information that we are having. So I'm going to come down here within this same class. I'm going to write a function called Emit Event. So word Emit Event word start. So it takes that dummy. Anytime you are calling that event, you must enter the word start. So let count event. This let, I'm creating a new variable here. So equals to new custom event. You understand? So this is like add event listener, all those events that are applicable inside the DOM document object model. You can also create your own special kind of event, and that is what we're doing here. So for us to be able to do that, so we are using the custom event class to initiate that. And this takes what's the name of the event we want to create? What's the name of the custom event we want to create? So it's the count event. All right. So, and the count event will take this callback function, So bubbles, yes, bubbles, as you can see, true, because this is a custom event. You must set the parameters. Then cancelable, can you see it's even giving us the properties of this particular custom event, because this custom event is also a class, and these are the default informations that it takes for its own constructor. So true. You can read more about custom events in JavaScript. You can just Google it. Then detail now. All right, so these details will also have its own property. So just word start, that's all. That's the word start we are passing anytime we call the emit event. All right, so after this, so we're going to call this dot input text dot, we're going to dispatch we're going to dispatch the event can't event. All right, so I think we're going to also create this can't event constructor. So as you can see, okay, so this is it, this can't event. This is it. So this dispatch event is helping us to dispatch this particular event to anybody that might want to call the event. You get? So that is that. You will understand how everything comes together as we let me explain again. The emit event method accept word start object. So inside the method, we create a custom event for the input text element, which is called count. We create a custom event for the input text element, which is called count. So that counting is that this custom event, we are the one that created it, just like a click event. Those events are already, when you say add event listener, okay, like add event listener click, if it is a click event. So that type of that's an inbuilt event, but here we are creating our own custom event. All right, where the method that will be called is the count, using the custom event. So we are now using the custom event constructor, and we dispatch the count event using the dispatch method. All right, these are all inbuilt methods. So let me say that again. The emit event method accepts a word start object. Inside that method, we created a custom event for the input element using the custom event constructor. This is it, as you can see. All right, and dispatch the count event using the dispatch event. So this count event is being dispatched using the dispatch event method. All right, so I hope you understand. So later we will be attaching the event instance to count, and the event will now access the word start object using the event details, blah blah blah. So we'll see it when we get there. So the count, this count method now. So we are now going to call the emit event. Of course, we cannot just call. See, it's already even giving it to us, because my ID is smart enough to know that I'm calling another method of this particular class. So the moment I wrote emit event, automatically this it's the ID input the this dot emit event for me, because it knows that that's another method or another property of this class I'm trying to access. So emit event, and the emit event is taking the word start, and the word start is actually what we've already created here. Okay, the word statistics. So word start. Okay, so that is perfect. It's how it is supposed to work. So now let's go to our app.js. All right, so you should not forget that for us to use class word counter, if you look at the HTML index.html, when the web browser is reading this file, it reads from top to bottom. So it is going to read the counter.js first before it reads the app.js. So it reads everything as a single file. So if you create a function inside the counter.js, you can easily use that function. You can easily call that function inside class.js because the web browser sees everything as the same file because we put it on each other. So this class word counter now, we can actually have access to it inside our app.js without necessarily doing anything because we put the counter ahead before the app.js. But if we put the app.js ahead of the counter, we cannot use what is inside of the counter in the app.js because it doesn't work that way. The app.js file will have been read before we read the counter.js. All right, so that's that. So here we're going to come here and write constant, because it's a JavaScript file, equals to input text. We want to get the input text using the input text equals to, we are going to use query selector into any element that have the ID of text, and that is our test area. So test, then another constant start element equals to, that's the just let me keep document dot query selector into hash start. So if you go to our index.html, this is it, ID start. So this is what we want to have access to. So then from here, we will now create an instance of the word counter. So like I explained to you, anytime I want to use this word counter class, we are going to be creating an instance of it. So inside the text, inside the app.js. So we're going to say new word counter. You see, it's even suggesting the word counter constructor for me. You understand? And because it is because I have defined the constructor, it is automatically taking is going to automatically take input text from the word using this constructor. So it's very important. Most classes have constructor. So if it has constructor, it means that you must pass a value inside this particular curly bracket when you are calling the instance of the word counter. So of course, what are we expecting? That's the input text. That's what we wanted to count. That's where everything starts from, the input text, etc. like that. So let's keep going. All right. So then we're going to call a render function. So we're going to create a function called render that update the word counter counts to the element event. So what we'll do now is that anytime the counting is going on, because this counter is the one doing the counting for us. So anytime the counting is going on, we want to be rendering it on the page, how it is going. So we're going to create a function here and call it render constant render equals to, so event, that's the event we created the other time. Okay, so the start element, that's the start section or start div dot inner HTML. So we are changing the content of what is inside using the word inner HTML. So I'm using that key on top of tab. So because we are putting an HTML code directly inside, that's why we use inner HTML. If it's just normal text, we just say inner text, but this time around we are putting So we write we have written so we're going to put a span so we'll give this class, of course. So we'll write this as like we are writing a normal HTML code. So highlight, okay, so that then here we're going to $sign, enter a value here. So event dot detail dot word start dot words. So words, don't worry, I'm going to be explaining everything. Okay, so we can click enter to continue to write what we are writing, because it is going to take more than one length. So, and then I'm going to just copy this, paste, and highlight event.details.wordStart.character, not word now. This is counting the character, the other is counting the word characters. So characters. So you have written, this one will return the number of word, then event details, word, then character, words and character. So let's go to our start to see the event that handles that. Look at it. The get word starter returns the character. I think this should be character, then the words. So that is what we're trying to access there. Okay, so here, character, words. So in that case, it means that here this should be characters, words, because that's what we're trying to access. So let's keep going. So input test now. This input test, we're going to add an event listener. That's the event listener that we created. Input test dot add event listener. What's the name of the event listener we created? It is a custom event listener that we created ourselves, and it is called can't. Look at it, custom event listener, can't. All right, so we are the one that created it. We've already emitted it here. It's already been dispatched there. So by dispatching it here, the JavaScript knows that there is an event that we've customly created, and anytime we call that event, then this happens. This is what it returns. Of course, you know that most other events that we use, they are already inbuilt into JavaScript. They are inbuilt functions. So all of this also have happened behind the scene, and we are not seeing it. But anytime you want to create your own custom event, this is the way how to create it. Then you have to dispatch it. Then when you dispatch it, add event listener, then it is expected you use the word can't. Because for JavaScript, the JavaScript inbuilt event listener that I have, I'm not sure that can't is there. So you can Google it. So you can create your own custom event listener in JavaScript. So what is the callback function that we will use? So we're going to use this render as the callback function. So of course, you know that we can easily write all of this inside here as the callback function of event listener, the way we do for others. But to make it easy, so that's why we created the callback function first. Then we now just call it here, right? So we'll continue to understand these things as we go. And I'm sure I'm going to make a lot of error while writing this code. So I don't know what error is going to be. So, but whatever error it is, we are going to see it ourselves as we proceed. So that is all. So we've initiated the new word counter here. So that is when we were able to now have access to the detail, words, start, words. Let me show you. This is the details. Detail, because that's from where we are accessing the event. Detail, word, start. All right. So then this word start is what we call when we are doing the counting. Here, it emits this word start. So then this one helps to automatically manage the so this word start is actually coming from get word statistics. You understand? So, and that is why we are able to have access to the object that is returning character words. So this, anytime we call this word start actually is having this inside. This is what is actually sent here. So, and that this emit event captured this whole return and put it here. So there is a way I can even rewrite it that all of this will even be in one function, but this makes it even easier. So I don't want to confuse you, but that is how it easily works. So whatever we are creating, this constructor is taking the inputs, then the counting is using the emit event, using the get word start, because this is the get word start that helps us with the counting, that does the counting. And anytime that counting is going on, it listens to an event called count and it automatically implements it. So I think that's the best way to actually explain this. So please take your time. It will be getting tougher, you might not understand, but first of all, make sure your code works and read your code from behind. Okay, so let's see if there is going to be any issue. Okay. So there is an error, cannot read property of undefined, reading value. Counter.js line 11. Counter.js line 11. Cannot read, let me see the error. Cannot read the property of undefined, reading value, line 11. Say this is not defined, input text is not defined. Okay, let me check. Yeah, it's always good we have this kind of error, because if we don't have it, we will continue to run into error. So how do we solve this problem now? We have to solve it by going to the constructor. This particular constructor, that's why the error is. So this place, that's why the error is saying this input text is undefined. Of course, we are just calling it here and it has not been defined. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come to our constructor. So I'm going to come to a constructor to say this dot input text dot add investment input. So I'm going to make this a callback function instead of just passing so I'm going to explain this. All right, so this does count that we are calling outside is the counting we are trying to have access to this input text, but it's saying the input text is not defined. So we decide to now make this event instance, make it a callback function, and put the arrow button, then now call this dot count from it, then put this, because it's actually a method, so you have to do this dot count, put the curly brace in front. So let's see if that problem will be solved. Oh, uncaught error, string.net is not a function. Counter line 21. Line 21. String dot length. Oh, I think it's not. It's just dot length. We don't need to put it. We don't need to put curly brace in front of it. That open and close bracket does not need to be there. So it's just string dot length, like this match dot length. So I made that mistake. So it's not a function. So refresh. If I come here, I told you I'm going to make mistakes. So by default, you can see it is working now. You can see you have written 2 words. This is the second word I'm writing, but it's counting the character, third one, fourth one, but the character is being counted. So it's as simple as that. Okay, so let me explain all over again this word counter. Let me explain all over again from the code. All right, so for us to have a proper understanding, so what we did first of all was to create a class called word counter. And when you are creating a class, every class must have a constructor. Constructor means that this particular information that the constructor is requesting must be provided anytime we are initiating the class. And if you come to app.js, for instance, this is where we initiated the class word counter. So we try to put the input text, and where is the input text? It's coming from here. So new word counter input text. All right, so that is that. Then what does it do? This dot input dot add event listener input. So anytime any event is happening within the test area, which is where this input is coming from, anytime you are entering anything into it, that's like entering input, this dot count method will be called. This is the count. This is the one doing the counting. That method will be called. So this dot count. And how does that being called? So the count method itself is just emitting an event. This emit event is passing the word start into it. So now, like I said the other time, I can easily come here. I can remove this dot count if it's going to make the code more complex for you to understand. I can remove this dot count and put this directly inside. And remove this dot count, and I think it should work. So if I refresh, see, same thing, it is working. So I'm making the code more easier for you from the initial way where we have to create a lot of functions. And even this emit.wordStart, I'm calling this emit function. So that means I can also come here, and instead of doing this newly, I can come here and put this whole thing here. I can remove this, paste it here. I want to mess this up. Okay, so what I'm actually trying to do is to, bring the code into just one, but let's just leave it this way so that we don't mess it up. So this gets word start string now, for instance, is the one that is actually returning the characters and what we are counting. So it's just simple. Like here, instead of us trying to even, we can easily return this word start coming. We'll call it, you had the word start, then the word start is here, count emit, then get word start. Here, this does get word start, is returning this. So word start is here. Okay, so I don't want to be confused, of course. So I'm trying to explain this to you in a way you would squarely understand. So I've removed the count now to make it a bit easier for you to now understand. So constructor This is the constructor, and what it does for us is that it helps us to run the counting. So this is trimming the word that we are bringing anytime we call the constructor input text. All right, so that's the input text. So it's going to trim it, then to pass it to the emit event. The emit event gets the word, and the word starts. Okay, this dot word start. Okay, so this word statistics is passed to the get word start, which returns it in this format, character and words, and put it here. Then the emit event picks that word and create a custom event for count, that anytime you call the custom event count, the output is always this. So we can now have access to the details of this particular event count when we call it here. That's what you saw here. Event, look at it. Render this event, add event listener, render event.detail.wordStart.words, event.details, event dot, this is detail dot character. All right, so that's what returns the character, details.wordStart.word, details.wordStart.character. So this is wordStart.wordStart.character.wordStart.word. So it's as simple as that. So that's how it works. I hope you grab that. So everything should work perfectly from your end. So this is how you